Jimmy Butler returns to the team today, but what role will he play? Plus, we break down what Heat legend Dwayne Wade had to say recently and the latest news about your team on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Have a jam-packed show for you today. We're going to get to Jimmy Butler's meeting with Micky, Arison, Milwaukee emerging as a potential suitor, and Dwayne Wade's comments about the Miami Heat. But first, David, the Heat will be wearing the original Vice jerseys for 10 games this season. That's right, starting Friday night versus the Nuggets. The Vice court is coming back. The white Vice jerseys are coming back. Vice is back. Are you excited as excited as I am, David?
Clearly not. Look, it's great. I'm happy for it because it was such a popular thing for fans, and anything that makes the fans happy is all right in my book. And it's also, for me, you know, Bam wore them, Duncan wore them, Jimmy wore them, but to see, and Tyler, I should mention him as well, but to see the guys like Jaime, Khalil, etc., Nico, being able to be a part of this and enjoy this and kind of usher in a next marketing phase of an extension, if you will, of something that was so popular among the fan base. I'm all for it. It's going to be great. I don't know it's going to make a difference. I know maybe the cynic in me is kind of saying, well, this kind of feels a little bit like you're trying to distract us with something. But I also know the reporting behind it is that this has happened well in advance. The planning for this has been in the works for a while. This isn't just kind of, hey, look over here, look over here, look over here, you know, and don't notice Jimmy burning the whole building down in the background. That's not what this is. This isn't a distraction tactic, as much as it might seem like that on the outside. So, again, I just, you know, if the fans love it, and they clearly did, not just fans of the Heat, but fans of the NBA, and even people who really didn't even like the NBA. Like, you see a lot of people that aren't even particularly basketball fans wearing these jerseys because they are so iconic and they mean so much, and they've come to almost be synonymous with a Miami brand, if you will. So the city, the South Florida area, has been embraced and kind of been just like symbolized by this fashion line, and that has just taken on a life of its own. And so to see it welcome back and return, it probably should never have been shelved in the first place. I know, having talked to, as you have before, a lot of the executives from the marketing side of things, that they're not comfortable just saying, well, yeah, it was popular, obviously, but what they like is to be able to continuously redefine themselves, kind of find new opportunities to tell different stories. And that's why they've kind of veered away from it. But you know what? Sometimes you have to go and pull back that book that you've read and a lot of times before, but it's just so good. You can't just leave it alone up there. You just grab it off the shelf and reread it one more time. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing with the Vice jerseys.
So a couple of details that I want to jump into here, and you alluded to some of them, but I don't think Tyler Hero wore the white jerseys. These were the 2018-19, and he got drafted the next year, right?
2019.
I think I had that right.
Didn't they? Well, They had the black ones his rookie. I think he wore the black ones his rookie year. I don't know if they ever wore the white ones. But in terms of sort of the ins and outs of what's going on, so the Heat will be wearing these for 10 games this year. They're not going to replace, or they are going to replace rather, your classic white Miami Heat jersey with the red numbers and red letters and everything. So those clean classic whites, which are some of my favorite jerseys. I'm a little sad that we're not going to see them again, but we're getting them instead with the Miami Vice jerseys. The Heat also are not going to be wearing their Miami Heat culture jerseys for the rest of the season, but that wasn't a cancellation, right? That's not necessarily what happened here. Okay.
I don't know. It's not an indictment. It's not a cancel, but more than anything, it's not really a cancellation because they front loaded all their Miami Heat culture days. In other words, their city edition for this year was their Heat culture. They front loaded for the beginning of the season all their city edition jerseys for the first half, knowing that they would have these coming back for the second half. And I suspect the biggest reason why they did that is because not only are they bringing back the jerseys, they're also bringing back the court. And I can't imagine that anybody working at Kaseya Center would have been thrilled about, wait, now we have 3 different courts that we got to do for about, like, we got the Heat Culture one, the Vice, and the regular one. So I would imagine, like, between the logistics and all of it, that they probably didn't want to have that going on either. So that's sort of part of it here. So we're only going to get them for 10 games. But those are 10 more games than we had. And I'm very excited to have them back. And more than anything, I'm really excited for the merchandise to come back. This was the greatest line of merchandise I think ever associated with a City Edition jersey. You were right, where it wasn't just synonymous with the team, where it did become like a second brand of this team, right? Beyond the red, the black, and the gold, it was like this. These are fuchsia and super blue and whatever they have their specific names for all these, and I'll probably get an email telling me exactly what they are. But they became sort of this second brand, and unfortunately, and I do mean this partnership between Nike and the NBA and the teams, they force you to come up with a new City Edition jersey every year. And I make this joke all the time. When the City Edition jerseys come out, it feels like half the league forgot to do their homework and did it the morning before having to go to school. They just like, oh, here's just our jersey. Oh, wait, this one's like all white. Cool. Like, it's just like, it feels like we have a couple of those every season. Where the Heat put a lot of effort into this one, and unfortunately, you're just not allowed to repeat it. And I think that once you knock it out of the park the way that you do with this Miami Vice jersey, and I think the Wizards knocked it out of the park last year with their Rose Garden or whatever it's called, like the pink ones. I thought those were awesome last year for the Washington. I think there's teams that have nailed some of their City Edition jerseys. I think that once you nail it, and like maybe you hit some sort of revenue threshold, if we need to make some of it like objective in some kind of way,
that makes sense.
You should just be allowed to keep it. Like, it should just be a race. It's like, okay, last one who doesn't get to that revenue threshold has to wear a dumb hat or something. I don't know. But you, like, these teams, if you nail it, you should just be able to keep it. And this is, the Heat basically felt the same way, because they have been lobbying the Nike and the NBA for 2 years to be like, the heck with your stupid rule. These were awesome. More than anything, everybody made a ton of money on this, because not only did we sell a ton of merchandise on this, but NBA gets to get a cut off the top. The Nike gets a cut off the top of all this stuff. Like, this is a moneymaker in a way that nothing has ever been a moneymaker in terms of the City Edition things since we've launched this stuff in 2018. It makes a lot of financial sense for us to all bring this back too. So finally, let them do it.
Somewhere Zach Lowe is really, really happy. I can tell you that much. Nobody was a stronger fan of the brand than Zach Lowe, having written a number of different pieces about it, not just the court design, but the jerseys, the thought process and marketing behind it. I mean, he was as big a fan as there's ever been about the Vice structure and everything.
And the merchandise, we should mention, is all available now. Miami Heat store online if you want to buy that stuff. They're wearing them for the first time. Did we even say this yet? They're wearing them for the first time Friday night against the Denver Nuggets, which brings us to the Jimmy Butler part. But I am definitely hitting the Heat store Friday night, and I'm finding whatever new merchandise. Like, I love the Vice stuff. I want something for the background of the show. I want whatever it's going to be. In terms of the distracting from the Jimmy Butler situation, the timing could not have been worse in some ways, and maybe it couldn't have been better in other ways to bring this thing back, because people are going to show up with their Miami Vice gear on Friday. It's going to be really cool. People are legitimately excited to have this thing back, but also extremely curious to see what's going to happen with Jimmy Butler, which we're going to talk about later on in the show. But I will tell you, for those conspiracy theorists out there, this had nothing to do with Jimmy Butler coming back or his position within the team or whatever. There was also no real thought about moving this. Like I said, this has been 2 years in a row. I think the way that it was put to me, it was like the train was already running and there was no stopping it. Like, there's not only do the Heat have to put the court and all that stuff internally, but there's outside retailers involved. There's marketing involved. Like, there's just so much stuff involved that, like, you couldn't even move this to Sunday's game. Like, there's too many layers in this already. And so, yeah, the fact that Jimmy Butler's suspension being lifted coincided with this long planned date to re-release Vice. That is just, again, it's a coincidence, and there's no conspiracies to be read into this.
I mean, they have to realize, like, I mean, there are times when they can turn out some merchandise fairly quickly, but for something of this kind of significant rollout, and as you said, something that's been in the plans for a long time, this doesn't just happen overnight. This is months and months of preparation. And so there's a lot of different moving pieces here. It couldn't be, right before Christmas when the trade request was officially made. And we're like, oh, let's hurry up and release.
Maybe those Vice jerseys laying around. Like, go get some of those. Like, put some new names on the back.
8 million of them in the back. All right, let's do it.
Strip Khalil Linux name off of it. Put Khalil Ware's name on this one.
What's a
red alert?
Red alert. Yeah.
So, for the record, to anybody who might be listening, we are big fans of Miami Vice coming back. If you want to send us free stuff, it would be very much appreciated. Coming up, the Milwaukee Bucks are being mentioned as a potential suitor for Jimmy Butler, and history shows why we should be taking them very seriously. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%, plus you also get a 4% raise on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from the first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. A reminder that your favorite NBA team now has a free daily newsletter, introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. If for whatever reason you miss an episode, which I don't know why you would if you're an everydayer, sign up to that newsletter and we'll fill you in on any of the Jimmy Butler stuff that you may have missed. But speaking of Butler, according to Sam Amick of The Athletic, the Bucks are a team worth monitoring when it comes to trading for Jimmy Butler. Here's what Sam Amick wrote. He says, while the Bucks ended Sacramento's 7-game winning streak on Tuesday night and have won 20 of their last 29 games, including the NBA Cup finale, Giannis was sure to highlight their 0-8 record against the top 3 teams in the East after Sunday's one-sided loss to New York. That sort of messaging, one could argue, should compel Milwaukee to keep the option open, in terms of Butler, as the deadline nears. There had been some reports saying that the Bucks, like the Grizzlies, were informed not to trade for Jimmy Butler. Sam Amick has pushed against that. I have not seen that reported in many other places, so I'm going to go ahead and believe that the Bucks have not been told that they can't trade for Jimmy Butler. Sam Amick also said on an Athletic podcast that he had got that confirmed from both sides, from both Milwaukee and from Jimmy Butler's camp, that nobody had ever informed the Bucks not to trade for Jimmy Butler that blatantly, at least. So are you buying Milwaukee as a potential Jimmy Butler destination, David?
Absolutely. I don't know what the framework of a trade looks like, but yeah, I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, you've got an aging Chris Middleton, an aging Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, Pat Connaughton, like the role players that were, and I should have called Middleton a role player, but you understand, basically he's been reduced.
Maybe at this stage, perhaps,
yeah, given his injury history and everything else like that. Like they have aged. They are no longer the team that won a championship a few seasons ago, and they're looking for a boost. They've got Dame Lillard, who's still able to play at an extremely high level. You got Giannis, who's as good as he's ever been, if not better. And given all that, they want to be able to bring another championship. They don't want to have a situation that has been quietly talked about in league circles for a while, that Giannis might grow increasingly frustrated with the way things have happened. They've tried to operate over the last couple of seasons in order to placate him, and which is why they were so active in pursuing Lillard in the first place. And so one way of assuring that Giannis stays here is to bring perhaps one of his fiercest rivals in Jimmy Butler, a guy who's always stood in his way in terms of being able to achieve general and long-term consistent success, I should say, because the Heat have always seemed to thwart Milwaukee, or a number of occasions they've thwarted the Bucks. And so I think you can grab a player like him, and I think he would thrive with Doc Rivers, a no-nonsense former player and a Marquette guy, so a connection there already. I don't see any reason. It would be, to me, a perfect marriage, and it would certainly make them, I think, the favorite to win the Eastern Conference, despite what Cleveland and Boston is capable of doing. Yeah.
I wouldn't go that far. I still have some concerns about their depth, especially considering what they'd have to give up defensively. Brook Lopez just isn't what he used to be, but definitely better than what they are. I think it would put them in that same tier as maybe New York in terms of probably being behind Cleveland and Boston. But whatever. I mean, it would increase no matter what you think. It would increase their odds to win the Eastern Conference, which is sort of the job if you're John Horst, their general manager. And so I agree with everything you said in terms of the on-court fit. And then in terms of the technicalities of it, Milwaukee is a second apron team right now. So they could pretty easily get below that second apron by just trading Pat Connaughton or potentially Bobby Portis into cap space. Looking at you, Detroit Pistons, which seem to be mentioned for all of these kinds of deals in terms of just absorbing a player into cap space. They're the only team that can really do it right now. But if they do that, then they go below the second apron. And why is that important? Because now you could start aggregating salary. If you're above the second apron, you're in the same position that Phoenix is in, where you can't aggregate multiple contracts. Phoenix is so high above the second apron that even if they were to trade Nurkic into cap space and take nothing back, they would still be above that second apron. So it's basically impossible. Milwaukee is above that second apron, but just not as much as Phoenix is, not as deep into it. So they trade Connaughton, they trade Bobby Portis, they duck below the second apron. Now, all of a sudden, they become much more flexible. They're a first apron team, just like Miami is. Still get those other teams involved, but it's at least workable at that point. The reason I say they need to also be taken seriously is not just because there's that. And by the way, if you see, that's a trade that would have to presumably happen first. So if Pat Connaughton
they'd have to trade Connaughton
gets traded,
do they have to trade both of them, Connaughton and Portis, in order to get under the first?
No.
To get into the first,
either one.
One or the other. Okay, either. Okay, that's what I didn't understand. Okay.
If they trade either one of them,
right
before any sort of other Jimmy Butler trade, those Windhorse fingers go up right away, right? Like they go up right away. All right. Yeah. So just keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on a minor move involving Milwaukee, because that would be something that would, and obviously it could happen at the same time, right? But you just do it in separate, like it could just all be announced at once, which is also possible. But you would just obviously
typically it hasn't happened that way.
One into the league office and then do the other one.
Yeah, typically it hasn't. We haven't seen that. I think generally you see those kind of cap clear moves, and you see the ensuing tweet, right, from Shams or Woj before him. It was, Pat Connaughton has been traded to Detroit Pistons for a second round pick or something like along those lines, and it is largely viewed as a precursor to another deal.
That'll be the storytelling aspect of all of this, right? So yeah, that's again just something to monitor. And then again, from Detroit's side, I think they're being patient with this cap space because they're mentioned by a lot of teams in terms of trying to dump some salary for whatever reason. And so if the Pistons could, and this is just me guessing, I have no reporting on this. I know that they're being patient with the cap space,
sure,
but to speculate one step further, they might just be waiting until right before the trade deadline. And maybe that's the only holdup in a deal here is that, hey, the Pistons just want to see everything that they could possibly, maximize this cap space with, because it seems like everybody wants to use it in some regard. So a lot of different moving parts, in other words. The other reason why I think Milwaukee needs to be thought of as a very serious contender to at least pursue Jimmy Butler in a very real, meaningful way is that not once, but twice before, when they have worried about Giannis's future in Milwaukee, they have made a dramatic move to alter the roster. We obviously don't know the Damian Lillard part, but even before that, the move to acquire Drew Holiday from New Orleans and sending 4 first-round picks to the Pelicans to get Drew Holiday, it was like 3 or 4, it was a lot. Right. That was a major move at the time that set them up for to win the championship in 2021. It was a great move, but that was a major move when they discarded Malcolm Brogdon, sent away Eric Bledsoe, they did all that stuff, and then made this huge move to go get Drew Holiday from a post-Anthony Davis Pelicans team. And when they did that, that set them up for the 2021 championship run. And then they went ahead and a few years later moved to Drew Holiday, who was obviously an important part and very close and near and dear to Giannis,
right,
for Damian Lillard. And that's why I also bring this up, because once they traded Drew, the idea that they would be nostalgic about anything went out the window. This is a cold, calculated front office that will do whatever it takes. And I mean that in a good way. Like, I mean that this is a cold, calculated front office that will do whatever it takes to hold on to their star player, the franchise icon, Giannis. We talk about Steph building an arena in San Francisco. Giannis built that arena in Milwaukee, the brand new one, right? Like, he is so important to that franchise. They will do whatever it takes to keep him happy. And the only thing that Giannis wants, as much as he loves Drew Holiday and loves Chris Middleton, he wants to be competing for championships more than anything else. And if they think trading Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard gets them closer to winning a championship, they're going to do that. And if they think trading Chris Middleton, despite his career-long friendship with Giannis, gets them close and gets them Jimmy Butler and gets them closer, see ya, you're out of here. Right. And so they will do this if the opportunity arises and if they think that it moves the needle enough for them to do it. And by all indications, I think they're at least open to it.
Oh, yeah. Let me pack your bags, Chris. You know, he's shipping him to the airport. Like he'll drive him directly there. Absolutely. Like there is no loyalty. I mean, that's as an aside, that's always been one of my private personal beefs with Giannis is that the friendly, cuddly teddy bear that he shows on the outside is so far from the reality of who he is. He's a fierce competitor. And so that's never, right. I don't think that's ever been questioned, but yeah, very much so. And so it's like, yeah, you can have this kind of camaraderie and everything else like that, but it's like, oh, you know what? We're getting a much better player. Sorry. Thanks for everything. I really appreciate you the years playing alongside you. Yeah, I think you're a legitimate threat. Now, my thought is, or I think what I've seen is that it would still be a multi-team deal. It just wouldn't be a trade between Miami and Milwaukee, correct? So we're still looking at what possibly a 4, maybe even a 5-team deal in order to kind of grease the wheels and give everybody something that they want in order to make this happen.
Yeah, and I've made this joke before, but I think that somebody has to inform Pat Riley and Andy Ellisberg that one-on-one trades are allowed. I think they're only aware that you can only do multiple team trades because this team like very rarely just does like a one-on-one, 1-for-1 trade, Terry Rozier notwithstanding. But like, yeah, you at least
makes
have
sense,
to
though, right?
Involved to take some salary at the very least.
That's you know, I think that's part of it too. And again, like I said, it's about getting everybody a little bit of something so that they won't be quite as gun shy about participating. And you know, everybody can kind of throw in a 2nd-round pick here, 1st-round pick there, a player with a certain amount of salary in order to kind of make this thing happen. You get the wing player you want, you get the star that you want, you get the picks that you want, but everybody gets a little bit of something so that you can kind of continue to expand it and make sure that everybody doesn't feel like they're getting basically screwed out of this deal. So I think from Miami's perspective, they're probably looking at it as like, this might be our opportunity, our avenue to get the best possible deal, because what we thought we were going to get for Jimmy, or even what Jimmy's representatives thought that they would be able to get for Jimmy, is not likely to happen. And so we've got to try and involve as many teams as possible so that we can increase our pot even just a little bit so that we don't feel like we're getting left out and we're not getting pennies, as few pennies on the dollar as it seems like they might be.
And if the Heat can get a few picks, even like 2nd-round picks, which are very valuable if you can't tell in today's NBA.
For them, they draft wisely. They use those picks. Those players will all participate.
And you can get like if it's Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis coming back, you could do worse than that at this stage. They're under contract for next year, so you're not getting that immediate cap space. But they come off the books in 2026, and we've talked about how Miami values that summer of 2026 when there's going to be a much more robust free agent class at that point. And in the meantime, Middleton's a good player when he's on the court. Bobby Portis, I think, could be helpful for this team off the bench, right? And so if there's any coach that can, cover up for his defensive inefficiencies, it's Spo. He's done it a million times with a million different players. So I don't know. I think you could do worse, right? I think if you're expecting that star package back for Jimmy Butler, you're never going to trade Jimmy Butler at this point. So
here's how I know that the trade is likely to happen. I feel like kind of churning in my stomach every time I consider Crazy Eyes great value Kevin Garnett being part of the Miami Heat roster here. That's why I know it's likely to happen. I'm not a Portis fan, and it's all these years of watching him burn Miami with his crazy eyes and providing
can't beat him, join him
points off the bench.
Great interview. Great. Hey, we'll enjoy.
I know you love him. I know you love talking to him. You wrote a great piece about him being a 6th Man of the Year candidate, etc. So,
thanks for remembering. Speaking of Jimmy Butler, he is expected to meet with Micky Arison. By the time you're hearing this, it may have already happened. We might have some news on it. I'm not expecting fireworks. I could be wrong. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Skims. When I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, well, I was curious. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, and I just had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it definitely lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, not significant ones, but you want something that gives you the right fit, the right comfort, or maybe even just the right style. Well, Skims changed all that because their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with a perfect balance of comfort and style. I tried the Boxer Brief, and let me tell you, they're perfect. You can be active in them. They move with you. They never lose their shape. They stay in place all day. Whether you're working out or just going from place to place running errands, they're the most comfortable and reliable underwear that I've ever owned. Plus, the lightweight material feels amazing, almost like you're wearing nothing at all. So shop Skims Men at skims.com/LockedOnNBA in Skims store. Let them know that we sent you. After you place your order, you select the podcast to select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. Then FanDuel app is so easy to navigate. The variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on the favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. So just visit FanDuel.com and join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make the playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show. Subscribe on YouTube, like the video on YouTube, follow us on your favorite podcast app, and subscribe to the Locked On Heat Insider newsletter. You can do that with the link in the show notes below. Free for 14 days, $4.99 a month after that. Cancel at any time, no sweat. But now's the time to join because you're getting all of the updates on Jimmy Butler before people get him on the podcast, and a lot of stuff that we don't even have time to share on the podcast as it's happening. If you want to know what's going on with Jimmy, that's the way to do it. Not only our own reporting, but all this stuff from around the internet that's coming out, whether it's from Sam Amick or locally or Shams or whatever. You don't have to go, digging through Twitter or the internet to find it. We just literally send it to you. So you have to do zero work. It's worth the money right there. Micky Arison is expected to meet with Jimmy Butler prior to Friday's game when Jimmy Butler's suspension is lifted. It's the first game he's eligible to come back. Again, by the time you're hearing this, perhaps it's already happened and we have a little bit more details. But in terms of what I'm expecting from that, not a whole lot, right? There's been a lot of talk about what this meeting could possibly be. But to me, David, this is going to come down, and there's a little bit of reporting behind this, but I don't think anybody quite knows how this is going to go until it actually happens. This is the way that meetings tend to go, especially ones involving Jimmy Butler. But this strikes me as two businessmen meeting each other. This is not a president of basketball operations or a head coach meeting a star player. This is two multimillionaires sitting down and having a conversation about money. And that conversation will essentially boil down to, I write your checks. I pay you more than $500,000 a game. What can I expect for my return on investment? Are you going to play, or is it going to look like you did against the Pelicans and the Pacers? Are we going to be forced to suspend you again, and then you lose another $2.5 million? I think this is going to be a meeting between two businessmen discussing the future finances of this partnership, understanding that it's probably not a long-term one, but there's still millions of dollars at stake between now and whenever the resolution of this thing is. So that's all I'm expecting, is for at least Micky Arison and Jimmy Butler to come to some sort of business understanding, which could obviously impact the on-court product, which, is Jimmy Butler going to be a little bit more involved in the offense? Is he going to just play and be the happy soldier and just do what he's told? I do have my own doubts about that. Jimmy Butler always finds ways to get the conversation rolling again, but I do think that this is just a conversation about clarity, essentially.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of exactly when you were describing it. It was just from Arison's perspective. I want some clarity. I want to know what to expect, because so much of the last few weeks have been speculation from Pat's comments saying that we won't trade you, trying to quash the rumors, and then to you formally requesting a trade via the media. So a lot's been said, and we want to find out exactly what we are going to be facing here. And I mean, we're going to try to accommodate you as best as possible, but at the same time, we have to know and we have to prepare, because we're all about winning, and we're still about trying to make sure that we can take care of the players that are going to be here in the long term. And you're not one of them. And so I've got to know exactly what's taking place here. So I get
and
that.
And Arison probably telling him also that I have no interest in paying you to go home, right? I'm not going to pay you $500,000 a game for you to sit on your couch, Again, Micky Arison didn't become multimillionaire by paying guys $500,000 to do nothing. You know, this is a businessman who values his money. So I don't imagine that that's really an option for him either. So maybe that's something that comes up.
Yeah, I wonder if they're, aside from the business aspect, which is obviously probably going to be the basis of their conversation, I wonder if there's any kind of personal thing here. Like, this has to be so uncomfortable here, you know. And I know that both of them are adults; they can kind of put this behind them. But you know, this was not that long ago what was largely viewed as a fantastic and lifelong partnership, and it just feels like at some point, you know, Jimmy didn't get what he wanted. The Heat did things maybe they shouldn't have done, and you know, obviously it takes two to make this relationship fall apart. But you wonder whether or not Micky tries to throw one last Hail Mary and try to see if they can, I don't know, just get some kind of understanding of where Jimmy's coming from to maybe make this a little bit better, so that you don't get Jimmy.
Is there a way to just
in the front office?
It's you know, you broke up with your long-term girlfriend, but the lease isn't over for 3 more months. How do we make this the least amount of awkward as possible until we both move out? You know, it kind of feels a little bit like that. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.